Welcome on into the show, everybody. It is season 8, episode 12 here on Tuesday, December 7th, 2021. That is right. We are fully entrenched, instaunched, whatever you want to call the word or the vocabulary regarding the NBA season into the way past the first quarter poll now, really. I mean, everybody's really played about 23, 20-ish games into the NBA regular season, and a lot of the narratives are starting to come and become crystal clear regarding what we're doing and where we are. I mean, 2 weeks, 3 weeks out from Christmas, we can 2.5 weeks out from Christmas at this point. Um, Obviously, the big time matchups between Phoenix and Golden State from last week occurred, and I really wanted to talk about both teams in a very enlightening sense from the standpoint of where we are moving forward in the NBA. And I know that they both play again Christmas Day, and we both know potentially Klay Thompson will be back for the first time in over 2.5 years. And obviously, looking at Devin Booker coming back from his injury, whether it's sooner rather than later, is a big time key as well. But let's all just be 100% honest. Phoenix looked absolutely fantastic in that game on Tuesday, playing at home. At the time, winning their 17th game in a row. They won their 18th game in a row against the Pistons, and then obviously their first loss since the end of October, as they fall to the Warriors on Friday night. And I'm really recording this podcast really post game of that Friday. So I'm way in advance of that. And I'm sure there's people who've already done their recap and people have already moved past it. And with the way things are today, people move past things quickly. So I know a lot of people have moved on from that, but I really wanted to hit it again and nail it again in regards to a lot of things. I watched this game's full entirety of the fourth quarter and saw how it played out as the game was winding down. And I think a lot of times, not just where the media or where us as viewers find an area to, kind of wind down from the overall content that we're viewing and that we're consuming, we start to see it and we start to say, okay, they're just kind of going through the motions, etc., and things like that. And we're not really, it's not really in the heat of the game. Obviously the Warriors were up 25, 20 points late in the game. The game was intact easily in the last 8 to 9 minutes of that game. But I thought one of the more impressive things that I saw regarding the entire game itself was the ability, the reminder that it gave me watching that fourth quarter is obviously NBA players are the best in the world, right? There's nobody debates that. But one of the beauties that I find in this game still to this day after doing this for as long as I have is that NBA players really come down to, when it comes to the execution, the ability to score, the athleticism, everything. Everybody is so evenly matched in regards to the non-superstars, like the guys from third best player to the 12th best player. They're all really close to one another. The difference is you look at the styles in which the team set up each player in their role and how that role fits them and suits them in regards to how they have to gel and how the chemistry allows them, and also how they can fulfill that role as a player themselves individually. And watching this game down the stretch as a lot of guys who are, more fill-in players, not that either of these teams have a lot of fill-in players. A lot of them have set standard roles just based on how everything's set up. But the Warriors overall, even in that game they lost on Tuesday, the Warriors overall have just a solid 8 to 9 player system. And a lot of their guys play very similarly in that, fast, athletic, twitchy, tight mentality. A lot of them, when they have a bounce, it's different. Like, it's not like they're all way better than everybody. Obviously, that's not the case. But something about the environment there. It's been the same thing since they went 73-9. The environment there has allowed for role players and guys with significant significant roles overall, not just role players, but significant roles. They find a way to succeed to a level where you see their athleticism peak at a point where you say, well, damn, this team might just win another championship. And it's not because, they've been the Warriors for 7, 8 years now. It's this culture that they've got in Golden State to allow for these role players to develop the way they are is absolutely phenomenal. You look at how they can all get themselves to that next level of finding a way to bounce off the floor at a different angle, finding a way to attack the basket at a different angle, finding a way to not just get points but set up points for different possessions, different styles of play. I saw styles of play on Friday night that made me wonder, is there another layer to scoring the basketball in the NBA that we weren't accustomed to seeing that is starting to kind of mold into itself? And what I mean by that is there's this like mid-game, half-court, not mid-range, but mid-game half-court speed that is a different twitch level, as in like guys who come into the half court set, but they still play at a up tempo, not just drive the rim and dish, but drive the rim and pass in the paint to then allow for what I heard today, which is perfect, the hockey assist. That's been a thing, but the way the Warriors represent it and play it, it's again a different look that I think is being introduced into the game of basketball that I don't know a lot of people have really kind of found a way to give an angle to describe. And I saw that on Friday night. And it wasn't because the Warriors won. I mean, listen, we know the Phoenix Suns didn't have Devin Booker. We know that, Bridges went down a little bit early in the game, and we all had a little scare there regarding that. But just overall, what they are bringing and representing for the game of basketball is a whole different, I think, outlook on everything. And, it's a big credit to Steph Curry, obviously a major credit to Draymond Green. And that's the other thing, too, that I think a lot of people don't realize. Watching that game Friday night, so many guys on Golden State have long, lengthy, and intense defensive presence that I don't think we really give a lot of credit for. And that's the kind of stuff that when you look at a Draymond Green and you start to say, this dude, I think, is doing a lot more behind the scenes regarding getting these guys ready to play this style of basketball than any other guy that we can really remember. I mean, let's be honest. Kawhi Leonard's an elite defender. He ain't getting anybody ready to play that type of defense. Paul George, another elite defender. He's not getting anybody ready. What, Tony Allen? He never was really trying to teach anybody playing that type of defense. Coaches were more or less doing that. I don't know of anybody on the Golden State Warriors outside of a Draymond Green who's actually prepping and looking to see everybody else play like him on the floor defensively. Long, lengthy, get after it, get nasty, find a way to play to your strength of what you can do with that high energy, and also play smart, play efficient. And I'm seeing that within this entire Golden State arsenal. And if they can have 6 to 7 guys playing that type of defense out on the perimeter and find a way to make sure that it can leak down low to find a way to get big men to slow up, I'm not going to lie. DeAndre Ayton, I watched him play tonight or Friday night. He looked absolutely unbelievable. I mean, DeAndre Ayton found a way to improve his game, whether it's through the contract talk or anything like that. This guy has found a way to absolutely boost his game. I had the conversation of talking to people about him being a top 10 center in the league. He might be creeping into top 5. And that's crazy because it's like I remember when he got drafted from Arizona and got to where he is now. And now he's looking like to be polishing his game to a higher level. He looks phenomenal. And the Warriors found a way to encapsulate that. The game Friday was interesting. The Warriors had 17 threes, etc. The Suns only shot or made 8 threes out of 22 attempts or something like that. And the Warriors only shot less than a handful of free throws, whereas the Phoenix Suns lived at the free throw line and still lost by 20 plus points. So it's that's the hard part about this time of year, right? The one hard part about early December basketball is that these kind of games, and these two teams, let's just get it out the way. Phoenix and Golden State are the two best teams in basketball. You can talk about the Nets. Obviously, they're playing great. They're looking great. They look solid. The Nets look solid. What Kevin Durant looks just he. We know Steph is the best player in basketball right now. I think that's a fact. But from a pure talent, size, and just ability and everything, I think KD's the guy. Does that make sense? Steph's playing the best basketball. And I don't know if it's a debate that he is the best basketball player right now, but from a just pure raw talent and ability perspective, KD probably holds more in his bag, if that makes sense. But it's tough to say that Steph's not the overall best right now. And that's not trying to shoot shots at anybody. I think that's just the actuality. But looking at how Golden State has against the best team, in the conversation of being the best team in basketball. They themselves are obviously the Warriors, but the Nets are in that conversation, the Phoenix Suns and the Golden State Warriors. But the point being is that both Phoenix and Golden State are very, very deep at every single area on their rosters. And what's really tough about this time of year, it's basically like a giant preamble, you know, a appetizer per se of what they're providing us, because we saw Phoenix play the way they played Tuesday. I said it to a lot of people. I said, listen, Phoenix looks fantastic Tuesday, but can we at least get an idea for what their adjustments are going to look like Friday regarding what we could see and how they change? A lot of people I knew said Steph Curry was going to go off on Friday night. 23 points, 8 of 20 from the floor or what have you. Obviously a pretty generic night for him, nothing great, but he affected the game in other ways. Obviously the way we all know he could, and he did. And that's the beauty of Steph Curry, is he finds a way now to impact the game more than just shooting the basketball, which is brilliant. And that's what makes him one of the greatest point guards of all time. But what I think is fascinating is seeing this Golden State Warrior team now have the opportunity to develop and move forward after playing this way against Phoenix, and seeing how they can develop and churn into something better, especially once Klay Thompson gets back on the floor. You look at the Phoenix Suns, right? The Phoenix Suns, defending Western Conference champions, won 18 games in a row. You can make the debate they're also the best team in basketball. But going back to the fact that it's this point in time of the year, it is so hard to tell which of the two still are the representatives of what you want to see out of the Western Conference. I think the debate can be made either way. I mean, Phoenix obviously had to win the amount of games they had to win in a row just to get to this point, right? Just to get to this point. But now we're set in stone that we know both are the best teams in the league. I don't know, outside of the Nets, I don't know of another team that you can put in the atmosphere of those three teams, especially the two teams that have played here over the last week. And that is the frustrating part. How can you tell based on two games and health, attrition, long durability, long lasting, this type of the way both of these teams are playing? Can they play this way in a month? Can they play the same way for a long period of time, outside of the first 6 to 7 weeks of the year? Can they keep it as a long-term thing? I know we all know Golden State can maintain it, and we obviously saw Phoenix do what they did last year, but can they both keep this type of style and level play, not just to Christmas, because that's when they play again, but heading forward through the rest of the winter into the early spring? And I think that's the key here, is to see how both of these teams, really grow and gel together and get better. Because I think from what I saw these last couple of games on Tuesday and Friday between the Warriors and the Suns, is that there is a big time opportunity for the chemistry to get better, the athleticism to develop and become more efficient for both teams, and obviously see the effort trickle and play itself out. These are just two phenomenal teams. I mean, 19-3 and 19-4. Those are ridiculous records, people. I mean, you're already 15 games above 500, and you're 23 games into the season, 22 games into the season. That is nuts. That's two teams. Neither team is talked about in the conversation of anything else other than a championship contender, and that's the way it should be, I think, for the rest of the year. I think anything less than that for either of these two teams is an absolute, you look at it and you talk about it. I think nothing less than that for both of these two teams is a disappointment now at this point. And I think that should be the narrative moving forward as we head into the deeper realms of the second quarter of the season. I don't think there's another way you can go about it. I mean, the Nets aren't really in that narrative. I mean, obviously they're a favorite to go to the finals, but the Nets really aren't in that guaranteed, they should be there mentality because the East is so packed right now. I mean the Nets obviously are the lead team out east, but from 2 to 12, I mean you're talking about all those teams separated by a couple games. The Eastern Conference has got a whole lot to figure out, and that's the beauty of the long-term seasons in the NBA and going back to the 80 games, 82 game seasons that we're accustomed to. That's the beauty of it. But I think the two teams out west that right now have championship aspirations that nobody should sit back and deny if they can do it or not, because they've both proven it, whether it's the last year or the last 5, are both the teams that played over the last couple of games last week. And I think when we look at them both playing the way they have, they're going to be just absolutely incredible to watch as the season plays out. I mean, I mentioned this before the game Friday that if Phoenix were to have beaten the Golden State Warriors after a back-to-back, no Devin Booker, extending their win streak to 19 games if it would have happened, they would have had some relatively easier matchups for the next week coming up. And who's to say they wouldn't have run that streak out to 21, 22 games, and they would have sat there at, 25-3, the convert, 24-3, 22-3. Who's to sit here and say that all of a sudden they aren't being in the conversation of winning 70 games? Obviously, that probably can halt now. You're 19-4. You do in about a week, like I said, have a couple of tough back-to-backs. I think they played the Clippers in Portland back-to-back here in about a week. That's tough. Traveling from whether it's LA to Portland, Portland to LA, doesn't matter the back-to-back schedule. That's tough. I mean, Portland is a long ways away from LA. I mean, that's a good 16-hour drive, 3-hour flight. That's a 2.5-hour flight. That's tough. And having to do that on back-to-backs this time of the year, whether it's December, January, this is the time of year where those kind of things can take a toll on you and do things to you. Those are difficult. It doesn't matter how good you are. And you would expect them to probably fall in some of those games. So then you're looking at, probably 23 and 22-5, 22-6 type of record. That's when you start to say, yeah, maybe the 70 wins is tough now. But even Golden State's got a conversation piece to win 70 games this year. I mean, that doesn't mean they'll do it. I mean, 70 games is such a rarity. Obviously, it's only happened twice ever. But when you start to say those numbers and you start to feel those numbers, you got to have some, equity into doing it. And I think after the Suns not winning their 20th game, within the first week of December, that kind of takes away the anticipation of that type of season. Both teams, Golden State, Phoenix, are on the doorstep easily to get 60 wins this year. I mean, think about it. Both teams are on the doorstep at 20 wins within the first week of December, and we still got to go till mid-April. I mean, both teams can easily win 40 more games moving forward. All they got to do is go 40-20 and they're there. I mean, that's 600 basketball. That's nothing tough compared to what they've done right now. This is a great start for both teams. And I think the way they both came out against one another on their own home court early on in the year is a great, great, great appetizer for what we could see Christmas Day. And I think it's become the go-to must-see game for Christmas Day. These are the two teams that should be in the conversation for what we expect in excellence within the league. And they proved it over the last week. I know Golden State blew them out Friday. I know Phoenix played very, very well Tuesday, and they looked great. Obviously still early. Obviously still a lot to figure out. But I think as we move forward and we make those adjustments, we see both teams and we say, all right, here we go. These are the two teams. These are the representatives of the West of what we should expect. Let's see what they can do Christmas Day. Let's see them kind of play everybody else as the rest of the year plays itself out. And then come playoff time, hopefully they play each other in late May, and we can see a situation play out where we get an instant classic, and then we can really divvy out to see what the overall picture is, because by then it'll be crystal clear as to what the scenario is going to be come then. That's a long time from now, We got to keep enjoying what we're seeing, but these two games last week were huge in regards to the overall narrative of the best teams in basketball. And I don't think it's a debate. I think not just because of where they're positioned, but just by the way they play. I mean, the conversation was so heavy about how hard both teams played. They just move different. I mean, even late when the game was in we all knew the game was over. Golden State looked like they were just playing on skates. You saw Phoenix; they were playing quick too. Both teams just played quick, athletic, lengthy. That's the way the game is now. Though that's if you want to win championships, that's how you got to do it. Giannis Antetokounmpo won an NBA championship. Long, lengthy, quick. That's how you got to do it now. And obviously, you got to have some outside power, but coming down to the way you have to win, it's starting to look like that. And the way Golden State kind of implemented this interesting half court sped up version of basketball, very fascinating way. The way things are kind of playing out here early on in the year. Like I said, the Nets, they're looking fantastic. As of the recording of this podcast, 16-6, looking great. You start to kind of see, like I said, the Eastern Conference right now, from 2 all the way down to 12. They're all separated by 3 to 4 games. Whether it's in the loss column, the win column, it doesn't really matter. They're all really, really close to one another. And you'll start to see that separate here. Moving towards Christmas, as we start to head towards those days and how they play out. I mean, we all know, we'll do a preview of Christmas Day anyway, but a lot of the games that come out Christmas Day, are going to really kind of set a path for what we are to expect for the rest of the year. December is such an interesting time because narratives become crystal clear on what to expect from players and how you set forth this 21-22 year. And seeing Brooklyn, seeing Chicago sitting at that 2 spot in the East right now, along with Miami, Washington, and Milwaukee, all sitting there hovering around the same section. Those will all figure themselves out as we keep moving, right? They're all going to find a way to sift through where the overall situation is sitting in the league and how it's all going to play itself out. And all those bottom teams are going to ultimately find a way to try and creep into that narrative as well. The interesting team right now is Cleveland. Seeing them sitting there at 13-10, obviously I think Sexton's out for the year, or at least from the standpoint of his health is obviously in question. They've got an interesting thing going on right now sitting there in the middle pack of the Eastern Conference when, talent-wise, we've all kind of questioned them for a while since LeBron left. It's been a real question. Are they going to ever turn it around? Kevin Love, is he finally, this is basically Kevin Love's second stint as being the guy in regards to what they are overall as a unit, right? And so, going back to his Minnesota days, 10 years ago? So interesting things there as we look at those scenarios play themselves out. Again, Utah 15-7, solid, right? Utah's in a very interesting scenario because they're at 15-7, looking, 3.5, 4 games back of the top seed in the Western Conference overall, and they're but they're not really in that in between. They're not Phoenix or Golden State, but they're not Memphis through Sacramento or Memphis through Denver, right? They're not in that realm. They're kind of by themselves. And the interesting thing about Utah is they clearly have a team good enough to win a championship. No one's sitting here saying that they don't. It's just they're not playing to the degree in which Golden State and Phoenix are. And so I think how their season starts to shake out is fascinating because they're not in that top tier of what those teams are yet. So a lot to decipher, a lot to see as we start to kind of figure things out here on December 7th. Couple of big games tonight for December 7th. I wanted to give these to you. Obviously, TNT obviously has their big games where you got Brooklyn and Dallas tonight. The big teams you talk about, Kevin Durant, James Harden, and obviously Luka Doncic. An interesting game there being played, what looks to be in Dallas. Dallas is in that middle pack of the Western Conference, and then the Nets are obviously the class of the Eastern Conference right now, just in regards to what they are and their talent. So that game should be interesting tonight. Another kind of stepping stone for Brooklyn as they start to move forward into their season. Dallas is just trying to get things right so that they can find a way to put themselves in position to get a playoff jump going. Like I said, that Western Conference below Utah is really muddled, a lot like the Eastern Conference below Brooklyn is all really muddled, and it's all really just trying to figure itself out. So that's the first game tonight on Tuesday, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Going to be an interesting one there. And then the late game, obviously rivalry, 75th year in the NBA. You got the Celtics and Lakers, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. LeBron James back from his health and safety protocols on top of what's going on there, as again the Lakers trying to get themselves out from underneath themselves. Same with the Celtics. I mean, 3 of the 4 teams tonight in their games, Mavericks, Celtics, Lakers, all really just trying to get their feet underneath themselves. I mean, both. What was interesting is I saw a stat about the Lakers regarding their playoff ability. You know, they played the Clippers on Friday night, and the Clippers won, and they had this percentage up on, and granted, ESPN, I don't really, who knows about what their overall statistical analysis really show in regards to projections, etc. But they said the Lakers are a fringe bubble team and potentially could only win 40 games this year. What I don't understand is, yes, we're 25, 26, 27 games into the season. We're basically almost a third of the way through the year. And you've got teams and you've got leagues and networks making projections about teams and where they're going to be right now. They're saying that the Clippers have a better shot at making the playoffs just because right now they're a couple of games up on the Lakers. Excuse me. And overall, because they beat the Lakers on Friday night, on the first Friday of December, and they are 12-11, the Lakers, or 13-11, and the Lakers are 12-13, that all of a sudden, they're not in the conversation or in the narrative of potentially being a playoff team. That just I don't understand that. In the NBA right now, within a 2-week span, the Lakers could win 6 or 7 games in a row, and they could be 20-12, and the Clippers could easily lose 5 of their next 6 games, and the next thing you know, the Clippers are sitting at 13-19, and the Lakers are sitting at 20-12. I mean, that's how it could happen, just like that, and all of a sudden your percentages change. So I don't know what they try to pull from in regards to what those percentages mean, and I know people get excited, people are diehard. That's why they come here to the Lead SM. That's why obviously people jump in and come here to the Lead SM, listen to us, because they're diehard basketball fans. But don't take these playoff percentages or finals percentages and any of this stuff seriously in regards to what's going on in December. It doesn't mean anything. Those percentages in regards to going deep or getting anywhere or making the playoffs or anything to that substantial beneficiary in regards to those things, they don't mean anything for these middle pack teams right now. These middle pack teams can all separate from themselves over the coming weeks, and as we start heading down, basically towards the halfway point, Martin Luther King Day and the All-Star break in February, you start to look at everything and you start to say, well, what was that all about back then? It didn't mean anything. This is where this time of year is where the heart of real teams start to take place, right? Christmas Day is really the opening introduction nationally to the rest of the league, to the rest of the world regarding, okay, we're here, this is our stage, Christmas Day, right? Then you go into January, the time of the year where it's the dog days of the year, it's the toughest time, it's the middle of the season for everybody, it's hard, it's really hard from the travel, from the way things shake out schedule-wise. There's a lot of crazy things that happen in January that really dictate health, all these things, right? And a lot of things begin to change and the real teams begin to emerge. And that's what's going on right now, is a lot of things are starting to meld themselves and figure out. And the beginning of those melding processes are starting now. I mean, they're beginning now. The top teams are starting to really, really position themselves and fortify themselves for where they are. And those middle teams, you'll slowly start to see over the days and weeks moving forward as we head towards the halfway point in the All-Star break, they are all starting to meld and create themselves for what the league's going to be. And you'll start to see the narrative start to grow. You'll start to see, the overall trending topics of what are going to be. Instead of the preseason topics, you'll now see the season topics for where we're going with teams and narratives and etc. Those are all really, really big things, and they're starting now. This is the time to step in and start paying attention to the narratives of what is and what could be for each and every team who's in that middle pack. So tonight's games are a very, very, very good barometer on what to see and how things are going to be as a growing stepping stone, right? Each individual game doesn't necessarily mean anything, but they matter in regards to the overall stepping stone of what you're building moving forward. That's how it is every game. That's how it is in a regular season, all 82, right? We all know that. But right now are the important games to build those blocks for what's going to matter in February and March when you make your stretch run. Come March, you're 40 and you're 40 and 24, or you're 33 and 30. Like, you start to look at the record of what you are, and you look at those overall landscapes of what you are. Those were all built now. They begin now. Right? If you're not a top team or a bottom team, if you're not Brooklyn, if you're not, Indiana, Orlando, Detroit, or, San Antonio, New Orleans, Houston, Oklahoma City, Phoenix, or Golden State, if you're in between and you're in that area, this is the time for your building block, right? This is the time for you to start to try and make, win 8 of 10, win 6 of 7. This is where you have to make that run. It's like a basketball game, right? Second quarter. These games don't really mean a lot regarding what's going to happen, in April. But in regards to the finish line of where you want to be, the push stretch, this is where that matters the most, right? Teams like Golden State and Phoenix, they can honestly go 500 right now for the next couple weeks going into Christmas. They can go 500. They can go 4 of 4. And they're still sitting 23 and 7, right? They still look phenomenal. Whereas you look at a team like Dallas, if they go 4 and 4, they're 15 and 14. Or they're, or they're 15 and 15 or 16 and 15. Like, this is where you sit and you start to say, okay, as a middle pack team, we don't have to win every game in a row. 6 of 8, 3 of 5, little spurts here and there. If we go on a 2-game losing streak, not the end of the world. Let's respond with a win. That's what you have to do. Building blocks. It's very, very nitty-gritty. It's very, very, in-depth and ingrained. But that's how you overall build those blocks to become champions. Look at the Milwaukee Bucks and how they won a championship last year. They weren't the best team in the regular season all year. Everybody knows that. You look at the top teams last year in the NBA and where they all sat. I mean, look at the top teams out west. The Jazz, they were clearly the number 1 seed all year long. And then you look at the Philadelphia 76ers. They were the best team all year long. Obviously, the Brooklyn Nets were right there. And in the Western Conference, you had the Phoenix Suns, who were the 2 seed, right? So all of those top teams, but who won the championship? It was the 3 seed out east, right? The 3 seed out east was the team that ultimately came out with the victor. So I've said it from the beginning of this podcast, right? Brooklyn, Golden State, and Phoenix should be, from here on out, viewed as the overall victors and, not victors, the overall favorites to take their teams to the finals come June. That's what the narrative should be now, because they've proved it, they've shown it, they've implemented it, they've put forth the results to prove that they're worth that conversation. Oh, Phoenix hasn't proved it. Yeah, they have. They've won 18 in a row, and they won the Western Conference Championship a year ago, and they went to the NBA Finals and were 2 games out from winning a championship. You're damn right they've deserved to be in this conversation, to be a team to win a championship. Golden State, outside of the last 2 years, for 5 years in a row, went to an NBA championship for 5 straight years. 5 straight years. Western Conference champs, 5 straight years, had a couple years off due to health, due to roster turnover, due to all these other things, right? They're 19-3, 20 wins, whatever, wherever they're at. They're playing insanely incredible basketball from all ends. Everybody's shooting threes. Everybody's playing defense. Everybody's playing hard. It looks great. The Brooklyn Nets, they're starting to catch that stride. They're starting to catch their own identity. And once they do that, they're in that same exact narrative, in that same exact perspective. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do it, right? The expectation is now there. That's the narrative that they should have. But it's these teams that are in the middle, these teams that start to find a way to grapple themselves and grow with where they need to be. A Denver. Denver is a great team. A Utah. I talked about them. They're kind of by themselves in that scenario in the Western Conference. You look at Washington. They're kind of in that interesting scenario. Right? You look at the Lakers. They're also in that scenario where they're starting to figure it out. Who knows if they get there or not. The Bulls are in that interesting scenario. So there's still a lot to go. And watch each of these games. Each time as we keep moving forward towards the halfway mark in the All-Star game, there's some key dates to kind of grapple from today, moving to Christmas, MLK, All-Star break. Those key dates, if you just kind of stamp them separately regarding now to Christmas, the next 2.5 weeks, look at the records. Look at where we are now with the way things are set up in the standings, to then go to Christmas Day, see who were the teams that decided to win 8 of 6, 9 of 12, right? 6 of 8, 9 of 12. Look at those teams. See then what they do from Christmas to MLK Day. Then see what they do from MLK Day to the All-Star break. That is how you will gauge and see who are the real teams and who are not. If they go heavily inconsistent, if they kind of stay where they are, those teams are not for real. Those teams do not have the shot. If you see teams starting to separate, play consistently, play with the great flow in a system, play with some hardy guttiness when they're going to need to, because we all know injuries are going to play a part in some way or another, those are the teams that we've got to grab and we've got to talk about here on the Hoopers Log to show why the league is getting back to where it was. Because what I saw from Phoenix and Golden State the other night, that's championship basketball. Those two teams, Tuesday, Friday, that is the way you play championship basketball. Can any of these teams below them, or any of these teams in that middle pack, excluding the Nets because we know they're in that same conversation, can they all play to that degree where they play that middle pack and they sit there and they say, let's do it. Let's go. Okay? That's a big project for you to look forward to as we move forward. I'll kind of give you an update next show, obviously, here on the Hoopers Log on the Lead SM. Season 8, Episode 12 is in the books. Episode 14 will be on December... what's the date? December 14th. We'll see you on December 14th. We are excited to be here for you at the Lead SM, leading with the W, deep into the offseason. That's where they are right now. Obviously, Motorcade 313. Jump on there, hear about how the Pistons are doing their rebuilding succession program. There's a lot going on there in the bottom half of the Eastern Conference for where things are. I would suggest you jump into our articles on theleadsm.com. There's a whole lot of things happening right now in the world of basketball that are starting to matriculate, grapple themselves, firmly entrench, cement themselves into turning into what we're going to see here as we move forward, as the league starts to, day by day, cement itself into what it is, right? We got to stop looking forward. We got to start looking now for where we are today. So that's what I got to say. I'm out. Please have a great rest of your week. Be safe out there. Whatever you have to do, whatever you are doing, I love you for it, and I hope you have a great one. Okay, have a good one. Thanks, y'all.